Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. The Jerich Show is back. I am, as always, I haven't changed my name over the past year, so I am still Javad Malik. And we have got a great welcome show for you today to bring you back to the new year. We're all a bit rusty and out of practice, but we're going to be talking about RDP, the Russians, the FBI arresting some book dealer, and why romance scams are the ones you should be looking out for today.
Welcome to the Jerich Show, featuring your hosts Javad Malik and Eric Krohn. Timely topics, poorly presented.
I had a New Year resolution to be kinder to my co-host Eric Krohn, but like my diet resolution, it only lasted a week.
Yeah, and that was the week I wasn't even around for you to bother. So yeah, we wouldn't have it any other way. Keeps it interesting, I suppose, is how we'll put that. So, well, welcome back. It's great to see our one listener and follower. Apparently they're out there somewhere, but yeah. It's a whole new year. Javad, we're going to have a good time with this show this year. Continue to spread wonderful InfoSec and cybersecurity news in a very, very poor manner. What do you think? Can we commit to that?
Yes, I think we can. And I just realized there's an awful mess behind me, so I'm going to clean that up in a second. But why don't you tell us about how you kicked off your new year by going to a show in Vegas, of all places?
Right. And, first of the year, this is why we didn't broadcast last week. But, I figured Omicron, YOLO, let's go to Vegas for the CES show. Now, the CES show is this huge consumer electronics show that also has great things like you've put up here, people in nose suits. And I just have to wonder who who volunteered to do this. I mean, I doubt this is a volunteer thing, right? When we do booth duty, we would never volunteer to do this. I think this would be danger pay. But when I was at CES, I saw all kinds of cool stuff. They have these robots that cruise around. There was one that was disinfecting robot made for like a coffee shop. So it just cruises around and sprays disinfectant when people leave. I actually saw a virus-proof table that had air curtains between, it was sectioned off in 4 parts, and there were air curtains there that were shooting air up that was supposed to, for whatever reason, not just make it airborne and blow all over the damn place, but apparently was there to shield you from talking to the person next to you. There were electronic vehicles. There were all kinds of interesting things at CES. Now, because of the Omicron virus, a lot of places or a lot of organizations didn't show up. They pulled out at the last minute, decided that they weren't going to be there. I did see Crealty, the people that make the 3D printers. They had a beautiful setup. They had all these 3D printers set up out there, and nobody actually working the booth. On top of that, LG, the big TV maker, the South Korean TV and phone and whatever screen maker, they just decided, nah, we're not going to show up after all. And they threw up these little pedestals with a QR code that everyone's just supposed to go around and randomly scan QR codes. That was the big thing this time, right? Right, exactly.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. But they didn't even bother putting carpet down. So it was like this chipwood floor base, and then these pedestals with some lines painted on the ground that you're supposed to walk from place to place, hit this thing and view what's going on. Now, there were some other things there, like Samsung was there, and Stellantis, the people that make the Fiats, it's the auto group over Fiat, over Jeep, Chrysler, and all of those. Even Vauxhall, I believe, which is one of your neighborhood vehicles. I know that's a fine British motor car, from what I hear. Yeah, right, exactly. But it was interesting to see stuff like this. Now, what actually shocked me too was the longest line I saw in the entire show was to one specific booth. I think you have that picture here.
Yes.
If you would wake up and put it up there, that was your cue. Yeah, this line right here was.
I started looking up Who owns Vauxhall?
Yeah,
because
well,
because in the 80s it was acquired by General Motors, a German company. So ha 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 ha.
yeah, well, so this line right here, this was the longest line I saw the entire time. It was to Satisfyer was the name of this. And what Satisfyer was a whole line of smart adult toys. Unbelievable that this was the longest line I saw in all of CES. Whoever ended up not being in that spot that should have been a floor right there should be pretty great, pretty happy, because otherwise that line would have been all around there. But this whole place was like this, like you see that big empty part of the floor, folks
Yeah.
not going. So it makes me wonder what the conference season is going to look like moving forward this year. If we're going to have another year of crap conferences.
I'm going to my first live event in about a week's time. It's in London, so I'll see how that goes and report back. But you're right, and you seem very judgmental that people are going and buying a Satisfier. So it's what people do in their own privacy of their own homes with an internet connected device that is telling everyone what they're doing is none of
Right,
your
right.
concern.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's first of all, do you have to make smart everything? I mean, there are some things that we probably just don't need to make smart. You know what I
The
mean?
the only thing we need to make smart are Americans, and in particular those in Florida. So if
Ouch.
we could do that, then I think that would make the world a better place. Anyway,
Oh, okay.
there's
So,
a easily exploitable Windows RDP bug that opens users to data theft. And I thought RDP was easily exploitable anyway, because you see it in every other report that how did the ransomware get in? Oh, because there was a RDP. But what is this all about? And what is this
yes.
image doing with this hacksaw cutting through that pipe? It's
Yes. Well, that's just it. They're exploiting Windows pipes, like named pipes and such, right? And the beauty of this, though, is they're basically able to kind of walk through the front door when it comes to RDP right now. And they can take over people's sessions. I believe they can modify the clipboard. They can take over like smart card login people's sessions, which is a real problem if you're military and use a CAC card. You know, RDP is one of these things that it's a love-hate relationship. Like, it's so easy to use and set up. And we saw this, we've talked about this before when the pandemic hit, so many organizations backed out very, very quickly. They had to work from home. And the easiest way to do that in a lot of cases is to take RDP, which is installed by default or it's available by default on a lot of Windows versions, most of the ones they use in corporate environments, and just pop it open and forward like port 3389 or get creative and do 3388 or 3390 to these machines. And voila, your people have remote access. The problem is they didn't necessarily secure them well. They didn't set them up to monitor and alert for brute force attacks, which are constantly going on. I mean, Shodan saw a huge rise in RDP at the time. And there's all these things, people still had crap passwords. They weren't using multi-factor authentication. And then they're just chucking machines internet accessible. And that was my problem with RDP. So I've been recommending for a long time, if you're going to use RDP, put it behind a VPN at least. Because VPNs, people tend to look at those and add a little bit more security to them than they think about with RDP. Well, now what we have here is a way where they can actually get in there and kind of just run through the front door of RDP.
Is there a
So
particular VPN you'd recommend though? Because I've been reading a lot of stories about how VPN, there's a whole cartel of them out there. Well, basically, a few companies own majority of the providers out there, and it's all a bit suspicious. Or are you one of those geeks that roll your own VPN?
yeah, I'm not talking about VPN like private internet access type VPNs. I'm talking about a corporate VPN where you're logging into the corporate VPN before you do that. I mean, honestly, VPNs are so easy to bring up right now. You got a Raspberry Pi, cool. You're $50 into the hardware. You throw on Pi VPN, and voila, people are getting in. You can use WireGuard. You can use all those kinds of things that are good there to secure the connections. There's no real reason not to VPN these days. There really
Wow.
isn't.
You're so out of touch, man. It's 2022. Wake up. So what you're talking about are like, I'm talking about more like mid-sized companies, which are the majority of companies, and a lot of them don't have a corporate VPN they can use. And you're talking about them where they might not even have a dedicated security person. They've got a generic IT bod who does everything and makes the coffee. And now they're expected to learn how to get a Raspberry Pi, stand it up, and roll a VPN, which they might be able to do, but they might introduce 7 other vulnerabilities into their whole network and create a whole new attack surface. So I think you need to rethink your strategy, and we will leave that story at that. So the Russians are coming yet again. They never stop coming, do they? There's something, one of your government agencies, the CISA, has said something about them coming. What is this all about?
Yeah,
And why
so
is this a surprise?
now this was an alert that they put out. Some people are taking it as if something is actively happening. I haven't seen anything that says like the attacks are way up on these sorts of things. But basically what it's saying is the Ruskies are targeting critical infrastructure. Now again, not a huge surprise. What I was wondering on this, if the reason they released this now, the reason it's gained some traction and people have talked about it, is possibly because there's all this tension at the Ukraine border, where Russia is basically looking at stomping into Ukraine. And the US over here is saying, don't do it. We won't oppose you militarily, but we're going to do more sanctions, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole lot of like power struggle, saber rattling going on there. And I'm wondering if behind the scenes we are maybe seeing a little bit more of this, or if there's been some chatter on what's going on there. I mean, yeah, government and embassy websites targeted. We are seeing some stuff like this.
Yeah. This is just today. There's like, like 15, 20 of these Ukrainian websites that have been attacked. And obviously BBC being BBC is like saying, was Russia behind it? Well, everyone kind of like knows, but they're not saying it apparently.
But, and critical infrastructure, that's nothing new. I mean, that's been going on for a long time with the critical infrastructure stuff.
Yeah. So, okay, useful. There's some technical details. What FortiGate VPN, see, even if you have a commercial VPN, you need to patch it because it can be a foothold for state APT actors to gain a foothold. Anyway, this is a really interesting story, and I'm moving away from your crappy advice, poorly presented advice, should I say? So this is really interesting. So a man was arrested in connection to a phishing scam. He stole, hundreds apparently of unpublished book manuscripts from famous authors, including Ethan Hawke. And it's really weird because this gentleman worked for Simon and Schuster.
Yeah.
And he was a rights coordinator for them. And Simon and Schuster is they don't take book publications from individuals, but an agent has to send it to them and they review it and then they'll take it to print and all that. So these are unpublished manuscripts that get sent to them. And so this individual, he set up like fake domains and represented himself as like execs. And because he was an insider in the industry, he knew what terminology to use. So he'd use all the shorthand versions of like manuscript and first draft or whatever it might be. And he ended up getting like hundreds of these manuscripts. And he's been charged with wire fraud, aggravated identity theft and everything and what have you. The thing is, no one really knows what he was intending to do with this information.
What are you going to do?
It's not like he could sell it to someone and they'll be like, oh, this is great, because they can't officially publish it. And there's nothing in there that wouldn't come to publication at some point.
That's a weird one, man. That's really weird because what is he going to do with the unpublished manuscripts? Now, I do have one theory on this. And that is somehow or another, he was targeting our still unpublished manuscript book that we have that You guys you heard it here first. We are publishing a book whenever Javad gets around to getting the artwork and layout done on this. We've only been waiting for that since last year.
November.
But I
have
really think that's what they've been targeting, man.
I have a confession to make, and Eric, this is the first time you'll hear of it. I spoke to my very good friend who was going to do it, and she said that she can't do it for us. So, but I did get a lot of good ideas from her as to what to do. So it's best things come for those who wait.
So if you all know somebody that does book layouts, let us know, please. Okay. Thanks, Javad. That's awesome.
You're welcome. UK police have warned that the period between Christmas and Valentine's Day is a time when romance scammers are at their most active, because people normally break up around Christmas time, I suppose, or it reminds people about how lonely they are. And there's not much to do in January. There's nothing much to look forward to. It's short days. You're home alone a lot of the time. And so people go on dating sites and scammers take advantage of it. Last year, apparently 92 million pounds was stolen from victims.
Yeah.
And, this is like one of really, really unfortunate kinds of attacks that people fall victim to. And our colleague, Roger Grimes, he's often spoken about this. He once wrote an article about it, and then he started getting letters from people about how, my so-and-so friend or relative is engrossed in this, and they think that it's a scam. And he goes, like, even after he's proven categorically to them that it's a scammer, they're so in love, and I think they're so hooked to it, they just disregard all the information to the contrary. And that's how they actually make away with so much money.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, relationships we've had in the past, like when we were younger, and your friends are like, that person is no good for you, man. And you're just like, no. And I mean, you totally don't realize until it's all over with. And you're like, don't say it. Just don't say I told you so. It's kind of the same thing. And yeah, Rogers talked about situations where he's taken the photo that the person is using in their profile, and he's shown people where this is not that person. This is a different person. This is a doctor over here. And those folks will ask the person about it, and they're like, oh yeah, well, I just don't, somebody's, my ex is watching for me or something like that. And that's why I used a different picture. And they go, oh, okay, it's okay. And they rationalize even the stupidest things to continue down that road. And this is something that, when I was with the Cybercrime Support Network on the advisory board there, we talked about this, how often, especially elderly folks, widowed folks, are taken advantage of with these romance scams. I mean, there aren't a lot of romance scams targeting 20-year-olds that, are eating ramen every day and have like $4 to their names, right? It's typically the elderly, oftentimes the widowed. They're alone now for the first time in 20, 30 years, and they have a little bit of a nest egg.
Yeah.
This is who gets targeted so much. And then unfortunately, even the people that once they figure it out, once they realize they're being bilked, they're so embarrassed, they never say anything, or they don't want to press charges. They don't want to bring it up. They won't even tell loved ones that all of this money has been stolen. And sometimes it can be recovered in some ways. And so it's a very unfortunate type of scam that goes on all the time. And by the way, folks, I am putting the links to all these stories in the comments, wherever it's letting me post the comments.
Good stuff. I was reading this article about decision making and the stories we tell ourselves. And they said, like, what often happens if you're climbing a mountain, if you're like one of those free mountain climbers, and there's no defined path, you'll go up a path and then you find it's blocked, then you come down a bit, then you go up, then you backtrack a bit, and you'll zigzag and you'll find your way to the summit. But when you ask them how did you choose your route, people, it's not like they're deliberately lying, but they'll always say, well, my experience told me that that particular type of vine was growing there, so I should take this route. The moss was a bit damp on there, so I took this route. And so in their mind, they'll always formulate a story to back up their actions in the back afterwards. And I think that's what we see happen a lot in whenever people fall victim to a crime, or whenever people do something that they shouldn't at work, because their brains are just creating that effect where it's just filling in the blanks for them and crafting a story, which we don't even notice sometimes.
So I'm going to make a profound statement here.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for profound statements. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We will be back next week. Same Jerich time, same Jerich channel. Stay secure, my friends.